Do you think that protests for the pro-Palestine movement should be allowed to take place in central London on Armistice Day?
Absolutely not. It's disrespectful to the dead that lost their lives in the wars, and they should not come near the Cenotaph at all. Armistice Day is for the grateful dead and all the ex-soldiers who lost their lives in the World War for us. And I think it's completely disrespectful if they do take part. They've got to respect our culture, and we'll respect them first. But at the moment, they're gaining no respect.
Why do you feel so passionately about it? Is it because of the significance of the day, or is it because you've picked a side in the conflict that's happening in the Middle East?
Well, it's the significance of the day. It's not to do with the Middle East, I don't think. It's the significance of the day for the English and the people who fought around the Commonwealth in the World Wars.
What about people that say we have a right to hold a protest? Those are rights that are enshrined, and not allowing a protest on that day would be stripping people of those rights.
Well, that's what I said. They can hold the protest somewhere else, just not near the Cenotaph.
It depends what the protests are protesting about. But with the Palestinians, I think that's a really difficult shout because it inflames so many people, and that I'm not taking sides on any of it, but I think it upsets so many people that I think maybe to get their message across, they may be better to do it on a different day.
I don't believe they should allow parades when people are trying to remember all the great wars and things that cause a great deal of emotion and grief, and to have people parading around for other subjects on the day. There are plenty of other days in the year when they could do this, and I think it will probably upset a lot of people, but maybe that's their intention.
The organisers say they're not going to come anywhere near the monument. They've been holding protests on a weekly basis, and that's why they're doing it. Do you believe that people do have a right to freedom of protest?
I believe people have a right to freedom of process, and I know the organisers of the various parades have said they're not going to come anywhere near the Cenotaph, but you can't legislate for stragglers, people who break away from these processions, people who just turn up to cause trouble, and they have no control over it, and even the police don't know when those sort of things are going to happen. It would be almost sacrilegious to interfere with the nation's right to have a period of mourning and reflection on the wars that we were engaged in, let alone other people's wars. I have relatives that took part in the various wars, and I just believe that I and other people in my family and everybody who was involved should have a chance to just reflect, and a period of silent reflection and a period to show that their feelings still exist. And also, it's a very important time to try and remind the whole of the country that we should try not to get involved in these wars again.
Do you believe that protests should be allowed to take place in central London on Armistice Day?
Absolutely.
Why?
Because protests should be allowed anywhere, anytime, as an aspect of the unfolding of a free democracy.
What about the people that say it is such an important day for remembering this nation's war dead, and there is a risk that even though the protest isn't going to take place near the Cenotaph, that event could spill over?
There's room under the conditions of free speech for all opinions. That means everybody needs to take up space.
And so, regardless of the day, regardless of the strong feelings that are happening in the country, you 100% agree that protests should be allowed to take place?
100%.
That's a real difficult one, I'm afraid, with you popping that to me straight here. I think that there are better times that it could take place. I think Armistice Day is all about respect for those that gave their lives for us in other conflicts, and I understand it will gain publicity. It's why people do these things, isn't it? But I don't think it should be allowed to happen on that day myself.
Why is Armistice Day such an emotional day for so many people in this country?
Well, it's still in living memory, isn't it? My grandfathers fought in the war. It's not like it happened 300-400 years ago. You can still see scarred buildings. There's families who lost so much, villagers who lost so many people. So it's still very close. Maybe in another 100-200 years it won't be, but I think for my generation, I'm in my 50s, it's still something, and I remember the Falklands and such like as well, of course.
Do you believe that protests should be allowed to take place on Armistice Day?
No, not at all. That's our day to celebrate and commemorate what people have done for our country, what people have died for, what the poppy means. Yeah, Palestine, what's happened there is awful, but that's our day. I lived in Australia for a while, and Anzac Anzac Day, the whole country shuts down. And if it happened in Australia, it wouldn't happen. It wouldn't be allowed to happen, so it shouldn't be allowed to happen here. Of course, you should be able to protest, but picking that day is very convenient. My view is they're picking that day to just wind up a few people and get their message across, which I kind of get, but I have close ties to the military, so I just don't understand it. So
the organisers say they've organised these protests on a weekly basis for a number of weeks now, and they're not doing it to wind people up, they're doing it to try to raise the profile of what is happening in that conflict over in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Does that make it any better for you?
Not for me, no. Not for me. Like, Remembrance Sunday is Remembrance Sunday. What's happening there is awful, but not on that day. Just not on that day.
So what do you think? Should the protests be allowed to take place unimpeded? Is that right to protest more important than the sensitivities around Armistice Day? Tell us what you think in the comments below and leave us a like and a follow.